welcome to the Mississippi Board of Pharmacy Compliance Division's Bullpen Report. We are launching this platform as just another way to educate our licensees on pertinent information. Our objectives for the Compliance Bullpen Reports are as follows. Number one, we will discuss important compliance topics. Number two, we will share helpful tips and reminders. And number three, we want to foster a better understanding of compliance. Today, for our first bullpen report, we will discuss loss reporting and accountability audits. So we'll get started. So how did we come up with the name Bullpen Report?
In the world of sports, the baseball bullpen refers to the designated area on the field where pitchers would refine their skills through practice and warm-up, while the coaches would observe and offer guidance. You too can benefit from the concept of a bullpen in your own professional life. Much like the pitchers use the bullpen sessions to hone their craft, please take advantage of the Mississippi Board of Pharmacy's Bullpen Report to improve your performance in your role as a staff pharmacist or pharmacist in charge.
All right, great answer. Thank you for that. We'll move into our first section, which we are talking about loss reporting requirements, and we'll get started there.
Losses or suspected losses of controlled substances are to be reported directly to the Board of Pharmacy at the time of discovery of the loss by any pharmacist who makes the discovery. You can report to us in any of the following three ways: via email at compliance@mbp.ms.gov, or via phone call to the Board of Pharmacy office. Ask for the Compliance Division at 601-899-8880, or via phone call to your compliance agent. Phone numbers are listed on the Board of Pharmacy website, www.mbp.ms.gov.
So our next bullet point that we'll discuss will be the complete inventory.
Complete controlled drug inventory must be done within 48 hours of discovery. It is the pharmacist in charge's responsibility to make sure that the controlled drug inventory happens within 48 hours, but any pharmacist can perform the inventory. And the pharmacist in charge being on vacation is not an excuse not to get it done within 48 hours.
Our next bullet point is submission of your written report within 15 days.
Within 15 days of discovery of a loss, a written report is sent to the Board of Pharmacy detailing your investigation and the outcome. Include the required controlled substance inventory with this report. Also include a copy of the DEA 106 that you filed. And remember, the pharmacist in charge is responsible for making sure this happens.
The next section that we're going to go to is actually to show you where in the regulations there are mention of securities, losses, and inventory requirements. This is not all inclusive, so refer to a complete copy of the regulations on the Board of Pharmacy's website. We'll start off with Article 7.
Article 7, number 5, sections B and C deal with security of controlled substances in the pharmacy. Section B holds the pharmacist on duty responsible for the security of the pharmacy, including maintaining effective control against theft or diversion. Section C states that the pharmacist in charge is responsible for the overall adequate security on drugs in all areas of the pharmacy at all times. Both a pharmacist on duty and a pharmacist in charge are responsible for the reporting of any loss or suspected loss directly to the Mississippi Board of Pharmacy immediately upon discovery. The pharmacist on duty can be the pharmacist in charge, a regular staff pharmacist of the facility, a PRN pharmacist of the facility, or a floater that just happens to be in the facility on the day the loss is discovered. Article 8, number 1, section E, just reiterates the responsibility of the discovering pharmacist to report any losses or suspected losses directly to the Board of Pharmacy. Reporting a loss or suspected loss to your pharmacist in charge or other supervisors does not excuse you from reporting this directly to the Board of Pharmacy as well.
Thank you. Moving on to Article 24.
Article 24 has to do with the security of the controlled substances and discusses the storage requirements. Controlled substances of any schedule may be stored in a securely locked, substantially constructed container, or they can be dispersed throughout the stock of non-controls in a manner that would obstruct theft or diversion, or they can be stored by a combination of any of these methods. There are further instructions for institutional pharmacies to make sure that in areas which allow non-pharmacist personnel access, all controlled substances must be stored in a securely locked area. Substantially constructed container or an area that only the pharmacist or authorized personnel have access to. This also includes expired medications that are controlled substances. One of the main things is do not put controlled substances if you disperse throughout your inventory in areas that the general public can see easily, such as drive-through windows areas or directly in front of the counter. You want them in areas that the normal public would not see.
All right, we'll move on to Article 25, which discusses inventory requirements for controlled substances. This article further talks about inventory reporting requirements for a loss of controlled substances. If a facility has a loss of controlled substances, and this is a repeat of some of the information that we've already given, but we want to make sure that we hit home with it. If the facility has a loss of controlled substances, then a complete inventory of all remaining controlled substances is completed within the 48 hours of discovery of the loss of controlled substance or suspected loss. The inventory is then dated and signed by the pharmacist who is conducting the inventory, and any loss or suspected loss of controlled substances is reported to the Board of Pharmacy immediately upon discovery. That can be done, as we told you before, by emailing compliance@mbp.ms.gov or calling the Board of Pharmacy office, Compliance Division 601-899-8880. And then you would do a written report that is submitted within 15 days, includes a copy of the inventory that you completed within the first 48 hours of the loss or suspected loss. And if you had to complete a DEA Form 106, you would submit that to us as well. We will move on to some additional open discussion and some questions that we will answer for you at this time. The first question is, what is considered a loss?
A loss is going to be the absence of something you think that should be there. It can be a discrepancy in a perpetual inventory, or it can be simply noticing that there are fewer bottles of a medication on the shelf than you feel there should be.
Okay. So our next question is, when do we report a loss or suspected loss?
You report a loss or suspected loss immediately when you realize that it has occurred. This does allow some time for you to do a discrete investigation. And by discrete, I mean only the pharmacist or that finds the loss to do a little bit of investigation before contacting us. So an example of you realize you might have something missing at lunch, you need to have contacted us by the end of the workday if you have not located said missing drugs. Do not announce we are missing 3 bottles of Percocet off the shelf. It needs to be done discreetly.
Thank you. Our next question is, do we have to do a complete inventory?
If in doubt, do the complete controlled drug inventory. I recommend you consider this document as a document that protects the innocent. So the more accurate this document is, the better it will protect those innocent individuals. That being said, there may be some unique questions regarding your specific situation. If you feel like you have some of those unique situations, please reach out to your pharmacy board agent with those questions.
Our next question is, where do we send our investigation report, a completed inventory report, and a copy of a 106 form if we had to file one once we are completed?
You can send these reports to our mailing address or to our emailing address, making sure to put to the attention of the compliance department, and also make sure that you make a copy for yourself and keep it at the facility.
Thank you. Next, we'll discuss employer policies versus board regulation requirements. So basically, you should ask your employer what their policies are for internal investigations on loss or suspected losses. At that point in time, you should do it prior to you actually having a loss or suspected loss, just so that you'll know what your employer's policies are. If your employer needs any clarification of regulations, you can contact us and we'll be happy to help you have those conversations. But the regulations are very clear, as we just went over those regulations, that it is the responsibility of the pharmacist on duty to immediately report the loss or suspected loss once they discover it. So to make sure that we are in line with board regulations and also what your employer would expect and that those line up, again, if we need to help your corporate structure to understand or we need to clarify the regulations, then feel free to contact us. So our next question is, what are the biggest issue you see with loss reporting? And this question is for the group.
I see one is lack of understanding what a suspected loss is. A suspected loss is, people say, well, I don't know if anything's missing. We're looking into it. Well, if you're looking into it, suspect something is going on. So you have a suspected loss.
Another issue is not keeping the research and investigation into a suspected loss as confidential as possible. As mentioned previously, you don't want to announce to the whole pharmacy that you're missing a bottle of drugs and has anybody seen it. Investigation and research needs to be conducted as discreetly as possible.
A hesitance to report a loss. You can give us a call and let us know that you're possibly missing something, then call us 5 minutes later and said, no, never mind, I found it. Just please report anything. It can always be retracted when you find it.
Remember that you're practicing on your license, not your boss's or your corporate structure's license. If something comes down, it's going to be your license on the line, not the corporate structure. So always remember that.
Excellent advice, everyone. If anyone is listening and they have some unanswered questions, or you may need further clarification on any of our previous discussion, we encourage you to contact your compliance agent for any further assistance with those questions or clarifications. Now, let's move on to the various types of inventories that should be conducted when required. And you can also conduct these inventories as needed when there is an issue that arises. It's essential to understand that inventory and audits serve different purposes. An inventory entails counting the items that you currently have, while an accountability audit is conducted to reconcile inventory, and it provides a comprehensive overview of what happens to your stock from acquisition to disposition. We will dive deeper into this as our conversation progresses. First up for discussion is the annual controlled substance inventory.
Annual controlled substance inventory is required by the regulations to be done annually. This count must be done within a certain time frame of a pharmacy's previous inventory. Regulations mention the month of May. However, a pharmacy may choose another date based on a pharmacy's opening date or other valid reason. Keep in mind, an annual controlled substance inventory is not the same as an accountability audit.
Okay. Thank you for that overview of the annual controlled substance inventory. Now we will proceed to the perpetual inventory.
That is an accounting method which continuously records inventory changes in real time. Each time you add inventory or remove inventory, that should be documented. You should also verify that new count and record it, and any discrepancies you have shall be investigated.
Thank you for that overview of the perpetual inventory. Next up, we'll talk about the change in the pharmacist in charge inventory.
A complete controlled substance inventory must be done at the change of the pharmacist in charge. We also call this a pick change inventory. The outgoing pharmacist in charge is required to notify the Board of Pharmacy with the effective date of change. A complete inventory of controlled substances is performed at that time, preferably done in conjunction with the incoming pharmacist in charge. If the outgoing pharmacist in charge cannot or does not inform the Board of Pharmacy of the change, it is the responsibility of the incoming pharmacist in charge to perform the controlled substance inventory and to notify the board.
We'll move on to the closing inventory.
With closing inventory, the PIC notifies the Board of Pharmacy at least 14 days prior to the closure of the permitted facility, with plans for transfer or disposal of the controlled substances, and does a complete inventory of controlled substances and out of dates.
So thus far, we've talked about the annual controlled substance inventory, a perpetual inventory, an inventory that takes place when there is a change of the pharmacist in charge, and the closing inventory. Now we will explore accountability audits. As previously mentioned, while inventory represents your current stock, an accountability audit aims to synchronize your inventory records, and it offers a detailed overview from acquisition to disposition. This audit, we can also refer to as a reconciliation audit, involves keeping track of inventory levels, assessing purchases, dispensing actions, returns of expired medications, and amounts that may still be owed to fulfill a prescription order. Let's take a look at a tool that you can use to do an accountability audit. We'll use this form to perform an accountability audit. At the top of the form, you see room for your permit number, your facility name, address, and city. This is just so you can have this as an official record at your facility. Then you see several columns. Column 1 is for your drug and strength. You'll count each NDC of the same strength for your total for that drug. In the example here, we are using alprazolam 2 milligrams. So you would count all the NDCs that you had received of alprazolam 2 milligrams. You would not mix one strength with another strength, and you would not mix your brand with generic. So if you received any brand name alprazolam, then you would count that separately, another line item, Xanax 2 milligram. Column 2 would be your last inventory count. So if you're accustomed to doing your annual controlled substance inventory on May 1st of each year, then you would go back to that previous inventory count, starting inventory as of May 1st, 2023. Then you would put that amount into that starting inventory column. In the example here, the last inventory count on alprazolam 2 milligrams was 75. So if column 2 was your last inventory, column 3 will be any drugs purchased and received since your last inventory. You may need to reach out to your suppliers for records and or use your invoices that you have. But definitely if you need to reach out to your suppliers to be able to get a complete listing, a complete report of any drugs purchased since your last inventory, then please do so. Here, our purchased since beginning inventory or since starting inventory of alprazolam 2 milligram was 1,150 tablets. Column 4 will be the sum of column 2 and column 3. And this represents the total amount of drug that is or has been at your facility since your last inventory, either by being brought over from that previous on-hand count or starting inventory, or received at some time after the starting inventory. So when we add column 2 and we add column 2 and 3 together, our total product to be accountable for is 1,225 tablets. In column 5, we'll make a note of any dispenses that we've done by looking at dispense records, any returns that we've done by looking at our reverse distributor records, any DEA 106 quantities that we've had to fill out as a result of a loss. Any of those type things would go in column 5. Here, when we see that we've dispensed or returned or had a loss of 30 tablets. Column 6 is where you would do an actual physical count of your inventory at that time. You would make sure to include your out of dates in that physical inventory as well in order to get this end inventory on hand as of whatever date you're doing the inventory. Our inventory for this date that we're performing this audit, we ended up with 1,100 alprazolam 2 milligram tablets on hand. Now, column 7 then is going to be a sum of column 5 and column 6. And this represents what you can actually account for either with records or what you have on hand. So you're going to add column 5 and column 6 to get column 7. Here, that number is 1,130. For column 8, you will take the difference between column 7 and column 4. This will represent the amount difference between what you can account for and what you are accountable for. Ideally, this number would equal 0. That means your inventory has balanced out. If it doesn't, you could end up with a negative number, which indicates that there is a shortage, or a positive number, which would indicate that there is an overage. Either way, both a shortage and an overage would need to be investigated. Moving on to column 9. This will be the variance between the amount you are short and the amount of total product to be accountable for. So that is column 8 divided by column 4, where column 8 is the numerator and column 4 is the denominator. Once you get that amount, you would multiply it times 100 to equal the percent difference. Now that we've gone through the accountability form or accountability audit form, we do recommend that you periodically perform an accountability audit. You can utilize those dates that we discussed during the form where you go back to your previous annual controlled substance inventory, or you can utilize other points in time where you've done in a complete inventory or an inventory of a certain drug and want to do an accountability audit based off of a previous accountability audit. That's always an option. So you may ask, so what do I do if my expected inventory and physical count don't match? What do I do when the accountability audit says I have an overage or shortage? And we talked about doing an investigation. First, check to make sure you've accounted for all purchases and any drug receipts and all drugs on hand. Go back and review your record keeping as well. Did you have a return to stock item that you may not have reversed or accounted for in your system? After doing these things, if you're still unable to reconcile your expected inventory and physical inventory, you may have a loss or overage that you now have confirmed. At that point, and after your investigation, make the necessary notes that you would need to move forward to help make your process better, and also that may mitigate any issues that you may have internally. So go back through processes and procedures, make sure that you've done everything correctly. And at the end of the day, if there is a loss, you know that you would need to report that to us and to DEA. Then moving forward, put a plan of action in place that would help keep those same losses from occurring in the future or even overages as well. We hope that this information on accountability audits and other information that we've given on loss reporting and inventory counts has been helpful to you. That is what these bullpen sessions are designed for, is we want to help you, but we want you to help us to help you as well. Thank you for listening in. Stay tuned for the next bullpen report.